Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius. We are in prime time, ladies and gentlemen, going live at 7 o'clock. Well, really 7:02, 7:03, but that's all right. We are in prime time talking about why the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that's right, your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, will not be tanking in the 2023 season, whether you like it or not. A lot of stuff to get into there, and excited to talk about it with my main man, Bailey Adams. I'm your host, Matt Matera, but Bailey is kind enough to join us here tonight. Bailey, how are you doing, my man? Have you fully recovered from the trip to Mobile?
I think I have for the most part. I know I'm less red, less sunburnt than I think the last time people saw me, which is good.
Yeah.
Still a little tired, I think, even though we're Wednesday night here. I think just the recovery from it. My first trip to Mobile, I think we're still recovering a little bit.
Yeah, obviously everyone knows jet lag and you take a long flight and that can impact you. But driving through the night and driving for like 7-8 hours straight, that takes a toll on you as well. I'm not
Hey,
saying
you did the driving, man. You killed that. You took the whole thing on, so
I appreciate it.
I can't even imagine.
you had to withstand it too. So
Yeah.
no, appreciate it. It was an awesome trip. A lot of great content out of that. Make sure you check it out on pewterreport.com. We have so many articles up from Bailey, Josh Capo, myself, Scott, Adam Slavon as well. Just all the stuff for the Senior Bowl, how it affects the Buccaneers, and obviously when it comes to the Buccaneers, how it's going to affect them for 2023. There's a big argument between should they tank, should they not tank, will they? There's a lot of moving parts. One of those moving parts, of course, is they have to find an offensive coordinator and they have to find a quarterback as well. And we spent Monday and Tuesday talking about those two positions and roles in particular. So before we get into why the Bucs won't tank, we'll talk about a little bit of housekeeping news in terms of the Buccaneers. There were two pieces of news today. The first one that just broke a little over an hour ago. It was reported by ESPN's Jeremy Fowler that the Bucs are going to be interviewing Dave Canales. He is the quarterback's coach for the Seattle Seahawks. This will be the first interview with Canales. He also is going into his second interview with the Baltimore Ravens. And for those that don't know Canales, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He spent his entire professional coaching career with the Seattle Seahawks. He started actually at USC as a strength and conditioning coach, then was the wide receivers coach from 2010 to 2017, became the quarterback's coach for 2 seasons, the passing game coordinator for 2 seasons, and then went back to the quarterback's coach, all under Pete Carroll and that coaching staff. So he got to work with Russell Wilson a lot, was responsible for 3 of the 9 Pro Bowls that Russell Wilson made. And then, of course, the biggest claim to fame right now is revitalizing the career of Geno Smith. Geno completed 69% of his passes this year for over 4,000 yards, 30 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. Seattle made the playoffs when no one thought they were making the playoffs. And Geno Smith got his first career Pro Bowl and obviously had that epic line. People wrote me off, but I wasn't writing back. So, Bailey, I think, I don't know how much you know about Canales, but I think what's really more important is that we're seeing a theme with the candidates that the Bucs are attempting to hire, or at least interviewing, where it's a younger guy. I mean, Canales is only 41 years old. That's pretty young in the coaching world. They're looking for guys that have worked with quarterbacks, worked with different talents, and either younger guys, whether it's Jim Bob Cooter and I was about to say Trevor Lawrence, whether it's pitcher with Joe Burrow, they're looking for guys that can get the best out of younger talent or guys that are up and coming.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I thought, to me, it seemed like the first round of interviews was done because we hadn't heard anything for a while there on the front of the offensive coordinator search. And that Dan Pitcher from the Bengals passing game coordinator, quarterbacks coach, got his second interview. So like, all right, they're starting the second round. Maybe we'll see it cut down to a few here. But yeah, this is a new candidate into the mix. And hey, if you're going to leave the West Coast after all this time, why not go all the way to the other side of the country, whether it's Baltimore or Tampa? But yeah, it's interesting to see the theme especially, they're working with quarterbacks. There's a lot of passing game coordinators, wide receivers coach, quarterbacks coaches, guys that some guys have had previous play calling experience. Some of them don't, but we are seeing a lot of that same background where, it's a passing league. So I think that's kind of the direction that the Bucs are going to go in. As much as Todd Bowles and the Bucs would like to run the ball more and kind of balance that out more than they did in 2022, it's still a passing league. And I think they're going to try to find someone who can work with a young quarterback and kind of move that passing game forward.
And it couldn't have gone any worse in terms of the run game for the Bucs last year. I mean, it was one of the worst in franchise history, NFL history. Overall, it was just really bad. But it was funny because I was looking up the stats, and the stats don't always tell all the stories. By the way, shout out to everybody in the chat right now. See Greg DeCruz saying "Hola" from Costa Rica. Greg, you're always a loyal fan. Appreciate you. Eaters in the chat as well. Flash Gordon. A couple other guys as well. So love that everyone's in the chat right now. But you look at some of the stats, yards-wise, Seattle only got 5 more yards per game than the Bucs did. The Bucs got about 20 to 30 more passing yards per game. But, you could obviously argue the Bucs were behind. They had to throw the ball. Seattle played with the lead much more. But the biggest difference, the biggest indicator, of course, is that Seattle had 23.9 points per game last year. That's what they averaged. The Bucs were 18.4. So I like the idea of Canales coming in and obviously reviving the passing game without question. As you said, it's a passing league. But learning and figuring out how to be most effective in the run game where whoever the next quarterback is doesn't have to break the all-time passing attempts and passing completes record that Tom Brady just had to do. I think he'll bring a really good mix of running effectively when they need to, and then, of course, increasing the passing game, which is the name of the game in today's NFL.
Yeah, and that's the thing is it has to be an effectiveness thing. You can't just run the ball to run the ball, and it felt like at times the Bucs maybe were doing that this season. But if you can, I know the Scott has used the term with Todd Monken specifically that he marries the passing game and the running game really well at Georgia, and that's something that the Bucs desperately need. It's not that they need to be running the ball 50% of the time and passing it 50% of the time. They just need to have that effective blend where you can open up the offense a little bit and not, like you said, not have your quarterback break the passing attempts and completions record at the age of 45. It would be, I think it would be a complete failure if you go into next year and whoever the quarterback is, if that next quarterback is breaking the passing records that Brady had, you kind of went wrong in the offensive coordinator search.
Yeah, very well put. And the search does go on. Some of the other news today that the Bucs completed their second interview with Dan Pitcher. We spoke a lot about him. And then everybody's favorite assistant coach. There's been a lot of moving and shaking with the assistant coaches this year for the Bucs. A couple have let go, a couple retired. One guy that is staying put in Tampa Bay and will be working with the next offensive coordinator. That is Tom Moore. I believe he's 84 years old now.
Think so.
Yeah, the 84-year-old Tom Moore has signed a contract extension with the Buccaneers, and I don't know about you, I'm very happy to see it. I mean, he's been around the game longer than anyone in the Bucs organization, and he has a fun little friendship going on with Vita Vea. If you follow Vita Vea on Instagram, he constantly has his phone in Tom Moore's face, putting him on his Instagram story. So I'm happy that Tom Moore is here to stay.
Yeah, I was going to say that there's a lot of people are happy about that, I'm sure, but I don't think anyone's happier than Vita Vea because those two have some kind of friendship going on, and it's very entertaining for all of us.
And one thing that was really cool, I mean, it was a sad moment because Franco Harris, the great Pittsburgh Steeler, passed away during the season, and Tom Moore got to coach him at one point when he was on the Steelers coaching staff. I don't recall at the moment. I apologize. I don't remember what assistant coach he was at the time, whether it was a position group or whatever it was. But Tom Moore came into the Bucs media room, I believe at the request of Greg Allman or Rick Stroud, and wanted to talk to him about like his experience coaching Franco Harris. And obviously, again, sad moment that Franco Harris passed away. But hearing the storytelling from Tom Moore, what it was like coaching back then, what was it like coaching Franco Harris, I'll admit that was a pretty cool moment to be a part of. So happy to see that Tom Moore is back with Tampa Bay. Let's remember, Bruce Arians gave him a ton of credit for the Bucs-Panthers game in 2020 when the Bucs ran a flea flicker, hit a wide open Scotty Miller, And Bruce Arians said that was Tom Moore's call. So, still had his imprint on the team a little bit. Speaking of the team, it's time to talk about why the Bucs are not tanking in 2023. Unless you think that they are going to tank, then you can feel free to make your case. But as you shake your head there, you doesn't seem that you agree with that take. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But first, just want to remind everybody that Celsius is the presenting sponsor of the Pewter Report podcast. They have a couple of new flavors out right now. The Fantasy Vibe, which tastes just like a creamsicle, and the Sparkling Lemon Lime as well. That's what I was drinking as we were driving back from Mobile. 7 essential vitamins. Make sure you go to your local Walmart, Target, 7-Eleven, or your bodega to check it out. That's Celsius Energy Drinks, the official sponsor of the Pewter Report podcast. Hashtag Celsius Live Fit. Okay, Bailey, you saw what the graphic is today. We'll start with you. In your opinion, in your eyes, what is the biggest reason as to why the Bucs will not be tanking in 2023?
Oh, the biggest reason. I feel like I have a few reasons.
Hey, go off, King. You can give as many reasons as you want, and I will, I will move and shake however we need to go.
I think let's just start for one of them. I think it's the coaching staff that is in place, especially at the top, head coach Todd Bowles. He doesn't have time to tank, he's went 8-9 his first year. They won the division, but they went out in the first round, and a lot of people will look at it as them underachieving. If they tank and they go 2-15, 3-14, do you think he's surviving that, or is he going to feel secure in surviving that? I mean, I don't know if the team gives him assurances, and I think let's take a step back. I think the wider reason why is that when doesn't a tank ever actually work? Like when's the last time a team actually set out to tank and actually had to define we're going to tank this season, and then had it work out the way they wanted it to? Because
Texans
I think,
are still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
The Browns tried to figure it out for the longest time, so I'm with you there.
The last time I think wasn't and it was funny the way it worked out, because I think the Dolphins were talking about tanking for Tua.
Yeah.
And then they ended up not getting the top pick. But by the time they had the top by the time that draft came around, Tua wasn't even the top guy anymore. And they ended up with Tua anyway, I think picking at 5 or so. But yeah, it's one of those things where a team's not going to go into the season saying, all right, let's lose, let's get the top pick, because these guys, their time in the NFL is limited. Whether it's the coaching staff or the players, they're not going to just, throw away a season of their NFL careers, not knowing if they're going to have another year in them. First of all, injury or whatever, performance, age, whatever it is. They're not going to just say, let's throw this year away on the off chance that we get the pick we want and we get the player we want. And then even that's a gamble. I think a lot of people are talking about Drake May or Caleb Williams. And yeah, I mean, they're great college quarterbacks, but the Bucs at the time had the number 1 pick in 2015, took Jameis Winston, who was a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, did really well at the college level, and things didn't really work out that way. So, and I'm not trying to compare those two quarterbacks to Jameis. It's just that you don't ever really know. And so to throw away an entire season just in the off chance that you hit on a quarterback, it doesn't work out that way.
You're absolutely right. And that's kind of one of the things that we talked about was there are no guarantees and assurances in the NFL. For every Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence, there's a Jameis Winston and a Jamarcus Russell and a Zach Wilson, who was the 2nd overall pick, but it goes into the same criteria. So the Bucs can't just think that automatically, all right, well, if we decide to tank this year, we're going to get one of the 2 guys you just mentioned, and we're going to be good to go. No problem solved. We're all set. No, that is not how it works. There's a couple of other reasons that I want to get to as well, and you kind of touched upon it with Todd Bowles, but we do have a super chat. And of course, if you super chat us, you get to cut the line. We want to make sure we address your super chat right away. So John Weiss, thank you for the $4.99 super chat. John says, can you guys elaborate any on the type of offense Dan Pitcher would run? He's, of course, is the Bengals quarterbacks coach. I can't find much about his philosophy online. He looks to be the front runner. So yeah, when you're the quarterbacks coach, you're not always going to see your direct effect on the offense because you have the offensive coordinator that is going to make those play calls. But Scott brought up a really good thing the other day. I believe it was a quote from Joe Burrow where he was saying that everybody works so much in unison, that everybody gets to put in their input. So I think the biggest things you would see if Pitcher becomes the new head coach is, one, you're going to see more motion and creativity. Two, you're going to see adjustments. The defense is taking away this side of the field. That's okay. We're going to either create a certain route to get Mike Evans open, or we're just going to attack the other side of the field. And the third thing, which I don't think the Bucs really did at all, every team has their weakness, whether it's a pass rush, whether it's a safety that is getting his first career start. The Bucs hardly ever attacked the weakness of the opponent. And I think you really saw it. I know the Bengals lost against Kansas City, but that Buffalo game, Joe Burrow consistently attacked the weakness of the Buffalo Bills, whether it was, having so many people wide open over the middle of the field. And I know Buffalo has Matt Milano, who's a great inside linebacker, but, they took advantage of, younger, inexperienced corners against, Jamar Chase, or they got Jamar Chase in motion and got him the ball so he can head up the field. I just think more than anything else, attacking the weakness of the opponent is something that we didn't really see with the Bucs at all last year, and that's what Pitcher would bring to this team.
Yeah, I mean, remember Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh had almost their entire defense out, and they had basically one game record. I think their entire secondary was rookies or inexperienced guys, not their first string guys, and the Bucs couldn't get anything done. I think Mike Evans had 4 targets, your number one receiver with 4 targets against that secondary. It's tough. It's tough to explain. Then you come out the next week against Carolina and you're just force feeding Evans the ball. There has to be some kind of, I think, transition in between that, or a gray area between that, where it's okay, you're not going to force him the ball like that, but you're also not going to have him involved in the game at all. You need to scheme him open, which I can't even tell you the last time the Bucs schemed the receiver open. It's been more like go out there and beat your guy, and that's it. So yeah, I think that's something you'd see more of with a lot of these coordinator candidates. I think are bringing that edge of creativity, and that difference making thing where we've seen some really archaic stuff in the offense of the last few years.
Archaic is the correct word, and outside of the occasional deep ball where Mike Evans would get free, Julio from time to time, even Scotty Miller to a degree, outside of like just the go route down the field, I really can't recall a time a Bucs receiver had more than, 2 yards of separation on a route. It really got to that point, which is insane. But thank you again for the super chat. We appreciate it. Getting back to Todd Bowles and Jason Lyon, why the Bucs aren't going to tank this year. As you said before, Todd Bowles cannot afford to have a tanking season because he very well could be out of a job. We went through the reasons why Todd was a little bit behind the 8 ball, even though he did get elevated to become the head coach, because he couldn't pick his own staff. There was obviously certain coaches that he probably would have changed but didn't get to at the point of the year when he became the head coach. With all that said, you still had Tom Brady as your quarterback, pretty much all the pieces you needed on defense and a lot of the pieces you needed on offense, and you still went 8-9. Now, with all of that said, the NFC South still does not look good going into 2023. So it is really, really tough, in my opinion, to say, all right, the Bucs are going to tank. We know that there's no such thing as a sure thing in terms of the draft. How can you justify tanking when you look around the rest of the NFC South and you see the Saints, other than bringing in Derek Carr for a visit, they don't have a quarterback. They're a year older. Michael Thomas is costing them like over $50 million on the salary cap or whatever
to not play.
To not play. Atlanta, I don't know if you saw the graphic on Pro Football Focus. It was like team needs NFC South. And it was like Saints, quarterback, Bucs, quarterback, Panthers, wide receiver, Falcons, everything. It's like clearly they're in disarray. It doesn't look like they have the quarterback of the future. There's not too many pieces on defense that you can point to and say, all right, this looks like a team that can, if you give them the right guy, they can go places. And then Carolina, same situation. Obviously, Frank Reich going in there could change a couple of things, but they traded away all their best assets. Their defense is still good. But there's a long way of me saying the NFC South is very much up for grabs no matter who you have as your starting quarterback, even if it's Kyle Trask, even if it's a Jacoby Brissett or Teddy Bridgewater or someone like that, you can't justify tanking in this year's NFC South when, and I've said this before, you could fall ass backwards into winning the division.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, if you put this, say it wouldn't make any sense geographically, but if you drop the Bucs in the AFC West, if you drop them in that division and say take out the Broncos, maybe you can justify tanking because you're like, okay, yeah, we have no path to the playoffs in this division with the way the roster is currently structured. But you look at the NFC South and you're like, they backed into it this year at 8-9. You know, I think they were just good enough to beat out a pretty bad Falcons team and a pretty bad Panthers team. You know, Panthers playing pretty well, but you know they didn't have an offense. They didn't have it all together. The Bucs should have really run away with this division last year, and this is the upcoming season where again everybody's kind of in a similar spot. I think the Saints. You look at the Saints right now, and if they bring in Derek Carr, like that's all fine and well, and I think maybe they become the favorite, but that doesn't mean they are the team winning the NFC South next year. They're in an even worse cap situation than the Bucs are. So like, you look at the Bucs situation with the cap. And it looks pretty bad. They're going to have to do some maneuvering to get back to cap compliance. But the Saints are going to have to do the same thing, especially if they want to fit Derek Carr's contract into that salary cap. So yeah, it's a wide open division. And so even though the roster isn't in the best shape right now, you think that by the time the season rolls around, it'll be in the shape to contend for this division because the division really is just bad.
Once again, I think it'll be one of the worst divisions in football, which normally it changes from year to year. I don't really see it changing that much for the NFC South. But if you want to bet on who is going to win the division next season, you have to go to mybookie.ag and bet on that winner. I mean, even if the Bucs are the odds-on favorite, you could still probably get them at pretty solid odds. It's a new year and a new you, so give yourself a fresh start with MyBookie. Whether you bet to earn or to make the games more exciting, MyBookie gives you the most for your money with their redesigned deposit bonus. Just use the promo code Pewter on a deposit of $50 or more to receive a cash bonus instantly to your MyBookie account. Using this bonus is simple. Bet your deposit amount just once and you're ready to cash out. It's no strings attached with MyBookie. Bet on the NFL. Season's coming to a close, but you still got that Super Bowl this Sunday. A lot of props there. Bet on the NFL, the UFC, or play for a share of big cash prizes in the weekly online blackjack tournaments. With so many brands to choose from, you need a platform that makes it simple to bet and win like MyBookie. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with mybookie.ag. You could also put up to $1,000 in a deposit bonus using the promo code Pewter, P-W-T-E-R. And even if you learn from Plant City Math, you know that is a heck of a deal. So one more time, get that deposit bonus, $1,000 with the promo code Pewter, P-E-W-T-E-R. There's another aspect of this, Bailey, that I want to get into. And that has to do with not just Todd Bowles, not just Jason Light, but really the entire organization. So for those that may recall, when Tom Brady returned, obviously season tickets were once again in very high demand. And the Glazers and the Bucs ticket office and everyone in the organization, they had pretty much a deal set in place where if you bought season tickets for the 2022 season, you also had to commit to buying season tickets for the 2023 season. Obviously, the risk and the gamble, talking about gambling at MyBookie, is that Tom Brady may not be back next season. And that ended up being the case. So there's a lot of Bucs fans that obviously want to see Tom Brady, got to watch Tom Brady, but also has season tickets for the following year. And listen, it's no one's fault. Tom Brady is a magnet. People go towards him. A lot of, New England fans that probably live in Florida that want to see Tom. And I don't think the Glazers want to get into a situation. The stadium itself, I know the Bucs customer service experience has been voted before as like one of the best in the NFL. I know the Glazers care about their fans. They want the best for their fans. And I don't really think that ownership and management would like to see this team struggle so badly, and the schedule hasn't come out. You know who they're playing, but you don't know when. I don't think the organization wants to get into a situation where the team is playing bad. They only have 4 or 5 wins on the year, and fans are angry because they had to commit to the second year and it's going so terribly that they're just like, screw it. I'm not going to watch this. I'm going to sell my tickets. And then if other Bucs fans don't want to go, they end up selling it to fans of the opponent that are coming into town. And I think a couple of good examples, I don't have the schedule up in front of me, but I know they play the Bears this year. The Bears come to Tampa. You're telling me one of the original teams in NFL history, fans aren't going to want to go from the cold weather in Chicago to come to Tampa to see their team play, even if the Bears stink. There's a couple other teams on the list, even division opponents, or Jacksonville was another one that Scott and I were talking about. Jacksonville's good now. They made the playoffs. They won the division. That's not a crazy far drive from Jacksonville to Tampa Bay. And I think ownership would much, much rather see Bucs fans in that stadium happy watching a team that at least is fighting to win the division or fighting for a playoff spot versus, all right, this season's done. They're tanking. They're looking for another quarterback. And the whole stadium, especially the lower bowl, is filled with fans of the other team.
Yeah, and there's two things on that. I think one of the things is just Tampa as a city and then just this general area. There's a lot of transplants anyway. So not only is it people wanting to travel down from wherever they are or over from wherever they are to see their team play in Tampa, it's a lot of fans into the Tampa Bay area are fans of other teams. It's just that's the way it's always been. That's the way it is. I think we saw a little bit less of that over the last few years with Tom Brady in town, but I think that's still a reality that the Bucs are set to face. And the other thing, I think you mentioned the Glazers and the organization just not wanting to tank. I think there's a sentiment out there, and we'll see if the Bucs can fight it or not. There's a sentiment that now that Tom Brady's gone, Cam Jordan just said it. Now that Tom Brady's gone, the Bucs are going to be what the Bucs have always been. There's an irony to that because the Saints without Drew Brees have always been bad. But with that irony aside, he's not entirely incorrect. That's the sentiment that's out there right now, right? That Brady's gone. He came in, saved the Bucs, took them to the Super Bowl, and they were winners for 3 years. Now they're going to go back to being losers. I don't think the organization, I don't think the players, I don't think the coaches are going to want to prove that to be true. I think they're going to want to fight. They're not going to want to just drop down there and say, we'll collect our checks, we'll tank for the season, we're not going to try, and that's it. I think there's going to be maybe a little bit of willpower to try to fight that sentiment out there and try to get back to being able to compete and show, hey, we learned how to win over the last few years, and we're going to try to sustain that.
The lack of self-awareness by Cam Jordan to be like, oh, they're not going to be good again. Meanwhile, as he said, Drew Brees isn't there, and Cam Jordan didn't win a Super Bowl with the Saints. He wasn't there when Drew Brees won. So yeah, he had success, but never made it to a Super Bowl. He likes to, he likes to get under the skin of Bucs fans. Like he was cheering when Donovan Smith got re-signed. Tried trolling the Bucs at the Pro Bowl. I was almost curious to see how him and Tristan Wirfs would work in the obstacle course, if you want to call it, because they were at the end pushing Eli Manning, and then they did the press conference, not press conference, sideline reporter talking to the two of them, and Tristan Wirfs couldn't even get a word in. Cam Jordan was like hogging the mic,
of course,
the whole time, of course. So just another little needling to the Bucs, and I would still rather be in the Bucs situation than what's going on with the Saints. So again, the lack of self-awareness by Cam Jordan is just, you have to laugh at it. And to your point, Bailey, I think it's going to be a lot more motivation for the Bucs this year. I don't think they're happy with how the season ended. That you got to have a poor taste in your mouth with the way that things went. And I don't think you're just going to be able to settle for the same mundane effort and play that the Bucs brought in last year or this year, whatever it is. And I think another thing to look at really is deciding to tank, deciding not to tank. How do you sell to Mike Evans in the last year of his contract? Hey, man, we're going to tank. We're going to tank, and we'll see what goes on from there. Chris Godwin, you just signed a juicy new big contract. Carlton Davis, you did that too. Ryan Jensen, welcome back to playing football. Great to get you in the playoff game. Now we're going to tank, and we're not even going to try. It is very tough to convince all those three leaders and more on this roster, very difficult to convince those guys who essentially run the locker room, are vocal leaders, community leaders. They saw what it was like losing on this team. Then they got the taste of winning. That taste is much, much sweeter.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was just going to say right along the same lines, like, you try telling Vita Vea, hey, we're not going to go out there and try. You try telling that to Devin White, to Antoine Winfield Jr. I mean, these guys aren't just going to be like, all right, we'll take the money, we'll go out there. And also, there's just this weird, like, if you get really down into it, if you don't try out there on the field, you're opening yourself up to getting injured. Like, that's like, you have to go out and try. You can't just go through the motions on the field. I mean, it's football, it's fast paced, and you're going to set yourself up for some serious issues. But yeah, I mean, you can't tell these guys, all right, that's it. We're done. We had our time winning. We got to build back up, and we got to get to a point where we can win again. And hey, you guys might not be here for that, but thanks for helping us, tank and do that. And, I think the overall thing is like, if, and I see some people in the chat saying like, well, this team is going to be the worst in the division. Maybe they are, but if they're going to end up with a higher pick, let it play out that way. Maybe they try their hardest and they're still a 4 or 5 win team. And maybe you get down to the end of the season and you are in a position to tank. And then it's more of a conversation. It's still, tough to say, hey, don't go out there and try. But you saw in 2014 when, the Bucs were up at halftime in the last game of the season.
Yeah.
They pulled basically the entire team and said, all right, we don't need to win this game. But, you're not going to go into the season thinking, let's not go for this.
And a lot of the guys you mentioned, they're under contract, like they are way too talented to be a tanking team. Like you said, Vita, Antoine Winfield, Devin White, these are Carlton Davis. These are all premier players. And sure, Devin White been up and down. We've been down that road. We'll get into it again this season. But all the other guys, Antoine Winfield, considered one of the best safeties in the league. Vita, when healthy, considered one of the best nose tackle. Carlton, if he could get his damn hands on the football, which Kevin Ross said last year, and it happened again this year, he's a great cover corner. Let's remember what he did to Jamar Chase. So it's really tough to tank when you have a great team around you. You're just missing a couple of pieces. But Teddy, with the $20 super chat, Teddy bringing down the hammer with this super chat. Thank you so much, Teddy. You're one of our best supporters of Pewter Report, not just because of the super chats, because you're here every day. But Teddy says, more negatives of fostering a losing culture, aka tanking. Franchise staples leave. Talented free agents avoid us. And it kills opportunity to evaluate players/coaches in games that matter. Cultures matter. Look at the Lions. Fight. Yeah, that's a really good point. Dan Campbell comes in. Lions were bad last season. This year almost made the playoffs. If the Seahawks didn't win the last week, it would have been a winner-take-all game, and they still said, screw it. If we're not going to the playoffs, we're going to knock out the Green Bay Packers, and that's exactly what the Lions did. I'm all with you, Teddy. I mean, when Bruce Arians came in, the first thing he really said was establishing the culture of a winning way. And yeah, sure, they didn't get everything that they wanted in 2019, but it set the groundwork. It set the foundation for what was to become a historic team in 2020. And then, the winning over the last 2 years, or at least winning a division, I should say. So yeah, I'm with you. You don't want to keep having that losing mentality. It's fun to even just be in meaningful games. Even if you're 8-8 and you're playing the Panthers with an opportunity to clinch the division, that's fun. You have a chance to go to the playoffs, and it's all about just having a chance, really, is what it comes down to.
Yeah, and I think the part of that resonates with me from Teddy's super chat is the franchise staples leaving. I mean, I know a lot of Bucs fans want Levante David to come back. They want him to finish his career as a Buck. They want him to stick around and, ride it out with the team that drafted him. If you go into the season, you're saying, all right, we're going to tank. This is not the season for us. He's not coming back. He's not going to want to, sign a 1-year deal to have a losing season and not have a chance. He's running out of years. He wants to get more, he wants to get more notoriety, wants to get another ring if he can. And if that's not going to happen here, he's gone. Like you said, Mike Evans is in the final year of his contract. I would imagine they want to get something done with him toward the future. But if you look at him and say, hey, we might be losing for a couple of years, is he going to want to do that? Like, you have a hard time selling, yourself as a team and just in general, your like Teddy said, your culture, when you're not going to try for a year. It's just the idea of it doesn't make sense to me. Going into a season and saying, forget about it. Maybe next year.
No, I'm with you totally. And sure, Tom Brady coming in played a huge factor, but they still attracted Leonard Fournette to come in, and other players of that nature. Where in years past, like, yes, they traded for JPP, but that was a trade. Shaq Barrett was a third stringer at outside linebacker in Denver. That was a diamond in the rough. You want to be a good team to attract more free agents, and you have the bargaining chip of you're in Florida. You're not playing in the cold. So, yeah, I think there's a lot to that. And sure, last season and probably a lot this offseason, Bucs are going to have to go with those 1-year Logan Ryan deals. And that's okay. But you still want to leave the door open for eventually when the Bucs get into the right salary cap situation, then they can go for the big fish, whether it's, an all-time wide receiver that becomes available or whoever, a great pass rusher to replace Shaq Barrett if he's not back for his Achilles injury. You at least have to have the opportunity, and that's what you're taking away if they tank this year.
Yeah, no, I fully agree, and it's one of those things where let the season play out. Whoever you get in at quarterback, like you're not gonna bring in a new quarterback with the idea of like, all right, you go out there and we know you're not good, and that's the reason we're bringing you in to start at quarterback. We know you're not good. Let's just lose these games and get in. Like it's just one of those things where I think it becomes a big talking point during the offseason. It's obviously a huge talking point right now, but it's not reality.
No, it is not. And it's very funny because you don't want to tank, but you also got to figure out, okay, who's going to lead us into not tanking? Like who's going to be that quarterback? Who's going to be that offensive coordinator? So I'm glad we got to chit chat a little bit about some of the candidates and, obviously the quarterback conversation will continue for quite a while because free agency is still got a little bit more time before that gets going. But Bailey, you've been very gracious with your time today. I know you got places to go, people to see. So thank you for joining the show. Any last words before you sign off?
Yeah, don't tank. Those are the two words. I think that's it. I think that sums it all up is don't tank, let everything play out the way it's going to play out. And we'll see what the tanking conversation's like at the end of the season.
I like it. I love it. That's a great send off there. So Bailey is going to sign off in just a moment. I'm going to stay on, answer a couple more questions from the fans as we keep the show going. So before I do that, let's hear a message from our friends at Age Rejuvenation.
As we age, our hormones decrease, both for men and women.
I was tired all the time, had no sex drive.
I was groggy.
I felt like I was 80 years old because everything hurt.
I came to Age Rejuvenation because I was tired all the time.
Bioidentical hormones has really made such an impact in people's lives.
I actually enjoy shopping now.
Got all my energy back.
Mind is sharp.
I feel like I'm 18 again.
It was perfect for me.
Get with Age Rejuvenation. Do it now. Don't wait.
Call Age Rejuvenation today.
Good and play good with Age Rejuvenation. Have better sex as well with Age Rejuvenation. They got testosterone therapy, peptide therapy, and stem cell therapy as well. As you see on the picture there, John Gilmore, former Tampa Bay Buccaneer, and was part of the Pewter Tailgate show this year. He speaks very highly of it. Scott Reynolds speaks very highly of it. Scott's lost weight from it. He's feeling more energetic. Same goes for John Gilmore. He's talked so much about how it has helped him, and it can help you too. So go to agerejuvenation.com and start feeling better. Who doesn't want that? Age Rejuvenation. Okay, so a couple of chats that I want to get to. And once again, appreciate everybody that is on the show watching tonight. Just wanted to get through these. People aren't happy with Anthony Richardson, the Florida quarterback. I'm not too high on him either. We spoke a little bit about it on one of the shows this week. That sometimes they kind of blend together after a while. But I just think Anthony Richardson would have benefited so much from playing another year at Florida. I just think certain quarterbacks, they come out too early, and it just makes me think especially for Richardson, in a situation, you go in and you see Bryce Young and CJ Stroud and Will Levis, all these guys are ranked higher than him. So at best, he's going to be the fourth quarterback off of the board. I admire anyone that has enough confidence in themselves to be like, I'm going to buck the trend. I'm going to be better than all these quarterbacks. But there's a lot of skepticism about a quarterback that's only started for 1 year. Some guys need more time. I think even to keep it Florida college football, Florida State, Jordan Travis, there's talks about him coming out of the draft this year. I'm glad he's going back to Florida State, not just because I root for Florida State, but I think he's a guy that really progressed this year. Obviously, the team was way better. Now he gets another season as a starter, running an offense, another year under the system. I think he's going to flourish this year. I don't think he's going to be the next Joe Burrow. Let's remember, Joe Burrow stayed one more season at LSU, and then they had the greatest college football team of all time. So exciting to watch. But I think Jordan Travis staying one more year is absolutely going to help him. I really think it could help Anthony Richardson. I mean, the biggest thing is that he's inaccurate. That's not great for a quarterback. It's awesome if he's mobile, but he's not as quick as Lamar Jackson, doesn't have a great arm. When you rely on potential too much or, this is what he could be, odds are that it usually doesn't work in your favor. So I'm a little skeptical about Anthony Richardson. I wouldn't really love him on the Bucs. With that said, I would totally take a flyer on Hendon Hooker. I think he's a way better passer, a stronger arm. Obviously, he's coming off of a really serious injury. But, you get him in the fifth round, whatever it is. That's a guy I would take a flyer on and then have him compete next season with whatever direction the Buccaneers decide to go. I got a super chat from John Boobin, says, will the Bucs try to hire a defensive coordinator? Todd Bowles got asked this at, I think, his last press conference when the season was done. So Bowles calls the plays on defense. He is the head coach. They had co-defensive coordinators with Larry Foote and Casey Rogers. Casey Rogers was the run game coordinator. Larry Foote was the passing game coordinator. They worked hand in hand. If he was going to hire a defensive coordinator, it would be an in-house hire. Odds are it'd either be Larry Foote or Casey Rogers. If you want to pick one over the other, I don't really know who I'd give more of an advantage to. Rogers did call the plays with Bowles when Bowles was the head coach of the Jets, so he does have that experience. And so you may want to lean towards that type of situation. Foote obviously works with the middle linebackers who are the ones calling the plays on the field, so you could definitely make a case for that. If they were going to hire a defensive coordinator, it would be an in-house type of thing. It's really more of a matter of, does Todd Bowles decide to give up the play calling so he can focus more on just being a head coach in general? But I think it's a good question overall. So another question earlier from Fabian Espinosa. Thank you, Fabian, for this chat. Says, who would you guys like to see behind the center next season? I would like to. So there's two ways to look at this. You can either go for the big fish of Derek Carr or Aaron Rodgers. I don't think either of those are going to happen just because of the financial situation that the Bucs find themselves in. If Carr becomes available via free agency, if the Raiders cut him, yeah, that's one thing. But I think a team is going to trade him before he gets cut. Now, Carr also does have a no-trade clause, so that plays a factor. But the financial situation doesn't work. I don't think really either one is worth. Rodgers is worth all that money. I don't know if Carr is, but if Carr's free agent, that's different. So then you look at your next level options: Baker Mayfield, Jacoby Brissett, Jimmy Garoppolo. Who am I missing? Teddy Bridgewater. And the guy, and we spoke about him yesterday, the guy I would be really interested in is Taylor Heineke. He's got the moxie. He's got kind of that FU attitude, played very well against the Bucs. He's made the playoffs before. I would take a flyer on him. He's won some big games, regular season games, but he's been in the mix to make some plays and worked with some good talent over there with Terry McLaurin, Antonio Gibson. So a couple of good talent over there. Their other running back, not James Robinson. He's the one that had the whole story. Anyway, yeah, some good talent there. So I think Heineke, you throw him with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, great players, make the quarterback a little bit better. I think that would be, Brian Robinson. That's who it was. The miraculously came back from getting shot and played this season. Shout out Brian Robinson. But Heineke worked with some talented players in Washington. I think it would be cool to see him work with the guys I just mentioned in Tampa Bay. And again, they can still compete for this division. So definitely would be interested to see. Another thing everybody's got to be interested in, of course, is the variety flavors over at the Celsius warehouse and in local stores near you. Before, you heard me talk about the Fantasy Vibe and the Sparkling Lemon Lime. Don't forget about the Arctic Vibe either. The Arctic Vibe, Peach Vibe, Tropical Vibe, an assortment of great different flavors. Go to the store locator. Check out where you can get a Celsius near you. Punch in your address. And then if you want to start getting them in bulk, I mean, you see the strawberry, kiwi, guava, sparkling wildberry, peach mango as well, sparkling watermelon. So a ton of awesome flavors there. Original orange. What else you got? Strawberry lemonade. I've been drinking that a lot as well. So you go to Amazon, click on the subscribe and save. You can have Celsius sent to your house or apartment every week, month, quarterly, whenever you want to do it. Just make sure you're drinking Celsius energy drinks, the official sponsor of the Pewter Report podcast. Once again, thank you so much to everybody that has been watching tonight's show. A lot of awesome input from Bailey Adams about the Bucs situation this offseason, why they will not be tanking going into this year. So that's about going to do it for us on tonight's show. We will have one tomorrow, so don't you worry. We got one more. It's actually going to be Josh Capo and Adam Slavon. They're going to be hosting the show tomorrow, so very excited to see what they got to say about your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And by the way, if you're new to PewterReport.com and Pewter Report podcast, if you've been a fan for a while, been watching, and you like the content that we put out, please do us a quick favor. Won't take you too long. Just subscribe to our social media at Pewter Report on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Of course, our YouTube account is Pewter Report TV. If you enjoy the content that we put out, whether it's the podcast, various videos from Bucs locker room, from the Senior Bowl, we'll have stuff from the Combine as well. Like and subscribe to Pewter Report TV. It just lets you know when we have new content out. It's absolutely free, costs you nothing. Just lets you know, Pewter Report, new video, and check it out. So once again, that's going to do it for us tonight. Thank you, everybody, for watching. For Bailey Adams, who already signed off, I'm Matt Matera saying we appreciate you all. Thank you so much, and we'll see you tomorrow for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Peace out.